you want to go ahead and get started, Harini?
We can go ahead and get started. Hi everyone. Welcome to the first STAR workshop of the semester. This workshop is going to be focused on how to get involved in research and what to do if you can't find a position this year, because trust me, that happens. Dr. Lustig put in the chat, but in case you didn't see it, this is a pre-survey that we'd like you to fill out. It's essentially just to help us get a better sense of kind of who our audience is, of who comes to these workshops. So if you haven't already, please scan it, please fill it out. It's very helpful for us as we continue on with these workshops the rest of the semester. Some general introductions. Hi, my name is Harini. I am a fifth year cognitive psych PhD student in the psych department at U of M. My research is focused on examining cognitive and neurological effects of memory interventions on older adults. Throughout this workshop, and even afterwards, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. My email is there. You can also probably Google me and find me. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to answer it and talk to you about what research looks like. We're also joined by Dr. Lustig.
Unmute myself here. Hi, everybody. It's so great to see you all here. So I also happen to be in cognitive psychology and cognitive neuroscience, and I do a lot of research on attention, memory, and motivation. And also just some other backgrounds. I also used to help run our honors program here. So if that's something that you might be interested in getting involved in the long term, and I've been doing STAR for quite a few years now. So I'm excited to welcome you all here today.
Okay. We also have Taylor here.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you over Zoom. I'm the program coordinator for the STAR Scholars program, and I'm also one of the 3 academic advisors in the psychology department. So if you ever need like a normal advising appointment with me or Leanne or Rachel, you can reach out to us, and I'm just here to best support Cindy and Harini today. Harini.
Okay, great. So today we're going to be talking about a couple things. We're going to be talking about the STAR Scholar Program. If people aren't very familiar with it, Dr. Lustig is going to give a really good overview of what we do in the program. Then we're going to be talking about traditional research involvement. So what does research assistants do in a lab? What does that typically involve, and what are the skills that they gain during that time? And then we're going to be talking about what do you do if there are no opportunities available? Because like I said, it happens. Labs fill up really quickly, but all hope is not lost because there is plenty of other stuff that you can do in the meantime to kind of beef up your CV or resume, and even other research opportunities outside of the psych department. So we'll be talking about all of that. First things first, though, I do want to kind of go over presentation norms. So I'm sure everyone is relatively familiar with Zoom at this point. We're, I don't even know how many years in, but just some general reminders. Please make sure that you're muted except when talking. Also, feel free to use the chat to ask any questions or make comments during the presentation. We love active involvement and engagement. So please feel free, don't feel shy at all to engage with us. We're more than happy to respond to comments or questions or whatever it may be. We will have periodic places where we're going to pause when we're doing our presentation just to see if anyone has questions. So if you do, you can raise your hand or you can chat at that point if you have any questions or comments about what we've been talking about. And when we do that, if possible, and if you're comfortable to do so, we do encourage you to turn on your camera during the discussion. Face-to-face engagement is always the best way to get involved and to discuss with us. So just some general ground rules as we move forward. So Dr. Lustig, like I said, is going to introduce the STARS program with you guys.
Okay, so welcome again. Yeah, so STAR Scholars, it stands for Scholarship, Transferable Skills, Academics, and Research. So we want you guys to get familiar with sort of what goes into being a scientist, being a professor, or even doing research outside of a university. And that's where the transferable skills comes in. This is something that we'll talk a lot about today because it turns out you get a lot of skills through doing research that are applicable in many, many careers. And many of you may have had experiences in other jobs or in volunteer opportunities that turn out to make you a really good applicant when you are going for a research activity. Academics, so one of the other reasons that we like to do STAR is that we know that when people are involved in research and they're interested in science, that it tends to benefit all of their grades and all of their classes. You can imagine it's a lot more interesting when you are involved in the science and you know where the experiments are coming from than it is just reading it from some kind of textbook. So when you really understand it under the hood. And then research, what we're trying to do is to go ahead and prepare you to be involved in research. And even before that, to research what kinds of labs and what kinds of science you might be interested in yourself, as well as what kind of careers you might be interested in. So Harini, can you go ahead and pop over to the next one? All right. So we'll talk about our goals and benefits of the program. So let's go ahead and start with our goals. So a big one is to prepare students to be researchers. Some people come from, really elite backgrounds where they get a lot of, sort of pre-training and so on. I even have high school students sometimes now contacting me because they're in some kind of program that lets them do research. But there are a lot of folks, and I was one of them, that did not have those kind of opportunities when they were in grade school and high school and so on and so forth, or maybe even not all the time when you're starting off in your college. I grew up on a dirt road out in the country. There was no research. I didn't even know what psychology research was when I was coming up. We also provide structured mentoring, especially in our winter program, which we'll talk about a little bit more about in just a moment. So you'll get a chance to interact with graduate students and we'll sort of help guide you on your path. And increase the number of students conducting advanced research. So we're really interested in helping you guys find your research niche and become involved in it and start bringing us some great ideas as well. I always tell people one of the first papers out of my lab actually came from an undergraduate who was working with us because they noticed something that we hadn't thought of. So getting the different kind of perspectives is really helpful. And that's why we want to academically support this inclusive community of students. We want everybody to have a chance to participate in research because people who come from different perspectives have different ideas. Okay, go ahead for the benefits. So you'll get mentoring from our wonderful graduate students, many who've also come from a lot of different backgrounds. We also do informational panels like the ones that we have today. If you join our winter program, we also have skill workshops. So we'll actually teach you how to do some of the things that will help you in the lab. You'll also get to hear from different faculty members. So they will talk about their research one-on-one as well as how they got there. And it's also just a really great chance to meet people. So a chance to meet other people who are in your position who are interested in research, a chance to meet faculty members, a chance to meet graduate students. And a lot of times that can turn into a research position or sometimes a job even after graduation. Okay. So our ultimate goal here is to prepare you with the research skills in order to be competitive for landing a research position, applying to grad school, or the industry or private sector job market. One of our later sessions, I think it's in November, we'll have people who went into industry versions of science and how they learned and how they use what they learned as an undergraduate in their research labs to help them land those careers. And our application deadline for that is November 3rd. We will remind you of that frequently. You will also see it in the undergrad newsletter and so on. But if you want to get a sneak peek at it, go ahead and scan that QR code. And if you have any questions, then just email us at the address below and let us know, and we'll be happy to help you out. Any questions so far? Okay. Go ahead and eligibility. So for our fall sessions, everybody is welcome. Even if you're not a University of Michigan student, we want everybody to benefit from this as much as possible. For the winter programs, we do restrict those to UM Ann Arbor students because they are in-person workshops. We're usually looking for folks from a background that's underrepresented in psych, neuroscience, or cognitive science, or a tribe member. And that can be geographical, it can be educational. Go ahead and so that often includes first-generation college students or first-generation U.S. citizens. International students are also very welcome. Transfer students, we know that can be challenging when you're coming in your third year to be able to find a research position when you're just switching over to a whole new university. So we also want to be able to help those folks out. If you experience financial hardship, we know it can be hard sometimes to make the time if you're also working another job to prepare for these positions. We want to help out with that as well. And if you've participated, if you've either contributed to or been a part of activities that broaden participation in education and science, go ahead and give the application a try. Okay, go ahead and bring up the admissions criteria. So academic performance, we do want you to have at least a solid GPA because the activities in the winter do take up some time, and we don't want it to be distracting from the main reason that you're here, which is to graduate and get your good grades. We are interested in folks who have an interest in psychology, although that's pretty broadly defined. We also include folks from cognitive science and neuroscience. So we will take some look at your current classes. If you haven't declared your major yet, that's okay. We want you to have a strong interest in research and potentially be considering a graduate program. This is sort of what the program is designed to prepare you for, so that's what we want to make sure it's a good fit for you. And a desire for mentorship, again, for our winter program in particular, you'll be working with our graduate student mentors. It'll be them and a couple of mentees, and so you'll get to be sort of a pretty close-knit group, and they can really help guide you on your journey. And we're usually looking for this winter program for people who are freshmen, sophomores, or juniors, just because by the time that you're a senior, it's hard for you to do the further preparation to get involved in research. Now, if you're a senior and you are interested, go ahead and apply. We do end up usually taking 1 or 2 each year. We just might then end up preparing you more to take a post-baccalaureate position, so a position for after you graduate. So any questions about that before we go on? Okay. So traditional research involvement, so this is sort of what a lot of people would do if you're here at Michigan. This would be like your Psych 326 or Europe. Some of the rest of you who are not at Michigan may have programs like this at your school as well, where you have an independent studies program. So why should you get involved? How did you define your research interest? What's your types of involvement? And then what do you do? So we're going to walk through all of those different aspects. So the why you get involved, you're helping to create knowledge for the world. One of my favorite professors had this saying of what we get to do in this job is we get to create. We get to find out new things that nobody else ever knew, and then we get to tell people about it. You also learn a ton of transferable skills, especially in team building and mentorship. So in a lab, you're almost always part of a team. So in my lab, it's me, I have several graduate students, all of them have undergraduates, we have honor students, and we're all working on different parts of the project and contributing ideas and thinking about how to help and support each other, which is really fun. If you want to go to graduate school or medical school, having research is pretty essential. This is true even if you want to do clinical. And as we'll talk about in some of our later sessions, research is even more essential sometimes for clinical programs because they are extremely competitive. Establish and grow your network. Again, being involved in research, you're always talking about your ideas with other people and learning about theirs, so you get to know a bunch of really cool people. Building confidence, there is nothing like working on your program or trying to get your experiment and, beating your head against it for days and then finally having it work. I see Hariti smiling because she has experienced both the tragedy and the triumph on this. And also refining your interests and goals. So, I changed, my research area several times as coming up from undergrad, going through grad school, and even now it continues to evolve. So that's also one of the fun things about doing research is that you really get to pursue the questions that are interesting to you and you're constantly learning. Okay. Identifying your research interests, some questions to think about as you think about what kind of research you might like is, what kind of topics, classes, or instructors really stood out to you and got you excited? So, if you find yourself talking with your roommate about what you learned in the class that day, that might be an area that you're really interested in. What kind of questions do you still wonder about? Are there topics outside your major that interest you? So, a lot of times Hariti and I work in cognitive neuroscience, so a lot of times I'll get students who are coming in from engineering and they want to talk about, well, how does this apply to AI? Or how could I use this to help me design prosthetics? Because we're learning about the brain. Thinking about what's your dream career. Is it one where you're going to be involved in research and how can you advance that field by doing it? Think about your hobbies. If you're somebody who really loves animals, then maybe you will like animal research. If you're somebody who really likes talking with people, you might like more survey or interview research. Again, what skills you're interested in developing, how does that map on to the activities you would be doing in the lab? Think about whether you want to work as part of a team or individually. Again, most science is team science, but there is a spectrum on that. Does location matter to you? If you really care about, I want to live in this part of the country, or I want to live in this part of the world, you want to see what the research opportunities are there. And then humans, animals, or, some people work with cells. What kind of level and what kind of species are you most interested in working with? So there's different types of research involvement. Some of it is in person. So right now in my lab, we have some testing that's going on where we are testing younger and older adults. And not only are we asking them to do computerized tasks, but we're also measuring the size of their pupil, because it turns out if you're really interested in something, your pupil gets really big. And when you are disengaged from it, it gets smaller. So in order to do that, we have to be able to have the person in person. Virtual, this is something that became very popular after COVID. We learned that you can put a survey up online or you can put your experiment up online, and you will get a lot of people from all over the world being interested in participating in your research, which is really fun. Human subjects, again, that's usually what a lot of us think of with psychology, but there's animal research too. And of course, everybody thinks of the little white rat, but there is working with monkeys, there is working with owls. We have somebody here who's working with finches. We have somebody who works with fruit flies. So there's all different kinds that you can do. Other times, maybe you aren't even collecting the data yourself. There's so much data out in the world. And one of the cool things about scientists, too, is they love to share their data. So a lot of this is open access. And so you can go through, you don't even have to collect the data. You can say, that's not what they originally collected this for, but I think it could be used to answer my question. So I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of the fact that they did all the work, and now I'm just going to analyze it. And then there's different kinds of positions too. So a lot of times you'll start off as a volunteer position or taking it as credit for a class. If you have a work study, then you might be paid, or sometimes you'll get a paid position straight up if you also have some good skills to bring with it. Okay. On the when to get involved, as early as possible is always good, but it's going to vary depending on your schedule and what's available to you. So you're going to want to keep in mind your responsibilities will vary with experience. So one of the things to consider is like, if you're taking 18 credits and this is a really hellish semester for you, it may not be the best time for you to get involved in research. Most labs are going to ask you to commit at least a minimum of something like 5 hours per week. In my lab, we usually ask people for a minimum of 9 hours per week. So it is a pretty substantial commitment. So you want to make sure that you have time to benefit from the experience. You'll want to ask when you go to the lab if they have lab meetings and if you're expected to attend. That really varies a lot across different labs. One of the great things is that it could result in a senior honors thesis, which is both a really fun experience and cool experience because you get to determine the project and you're really making something that's your own. It also looks amazing for jobs and graduate schools and medical school. If you do want to do a senior honors thesis, again, it's really helpful to get started early because it's also a big investment from the lab. They're investing a lot in you and mentoring you. And so a lot of times they really prefer to have somebody that they've been working with for at least a year. And this doesn't happen for everybody, but it happens reasonably often that you actually get a presentation or a publication and then you get to go show mom and dad and be like, look, I'm nerd famous. I actually have a publication that everybody in the world is going to read about the research that I did. So if this sounds interesting to you, visit the psych department websites. If you're here at Michigan, visit those websites. If you're someplace else, take a look at the websites for your university. Also, don't sleep on departments outside of psychology. One thing I can say, and this is especially true here at Michigan, is that because we have so many students who take one of the psychology majors. We have 4 majors associated with our department, right? So we have psychology, BCN, neuroscience, and cognitive science. The faculty here get a lot of emails asking for positions. However, there are researchers over in the business school who do research that's psychology. There are people in kinesiology that do research that's psychology. There are people in the med school that do research that's psychology. So just try to think creatively and say, like, here, is there a link to the kind of stuff that I want to do? And a lot of those other schools don't have the same kind of influx of students that they're teaching in their classes. Look at faculty profiles and lab websites. A lot of faculty, and I'm guilty of this as well, aren't always super up to date on our lab websites, but it gives you at least an idea of what they're doing. Talk to your instructors, talk to your GSI, or if you're not a Michigan student, to your TAs. Often the graduate students are the best people to talk to because they know what's going on in their lab and they also know what's going on in their friend's lab and who's looking for help. We have a ton of resources through STAR that we'll make available to you. Be realistic. It takes time. It takes time both to find a position and it also takes time to make your wonderful findings. It's not eureka every day. A lot of times it's doing the grunt work to get to there. But consider the big picture and how this fits into what you want to do. So this would be an example of research trajectory. So, in your first year, you might start off just sort of exploring what your interests are, seeing what kind of classes appeal to you, taking your intro psych course. That's one of the fun things about intro psych is you cover, just this huge swath of topics. And then as a sophomore, join your research lab, potentially apply for a summer internship if you can get one of those. So that actually, often those will pay you to work over the summer, not a lot, but enough to live, and then usually we'll give you a place to live. As a junior, then you would continue in your research lab, maybe do another summer internship, and at this point you would start thinking about what you might want to do as your honors thesis. And then as a senior, you could present your senior thesis or your honors thesis. And then if you think, okay, I really like this research stuff, but I don't know if I want to continue on to grad school just yet. A lot of times people will apply for what's called a post-bac. So basically a post-graduation research job. And those are kind of fun because you can move to a new place. You really are focusing just on the research. You don't have to worry about the classes. And you get a chance to see like, okay, is this something that I really enjoy? And also I'm getting to meet new people and live in a new place. If you are here at Michigan, one to put on your calendar is that November 11th, we are going to have a psychology research and service learning fair. And that's a great opportunity because there are a lot of times labs that are looking for research assistants. They'll have a little table there to tell you about their research too. And there are a lot of these. We will make these slides available as well to those of you who registered today. So these will be good ones to look up. So Summer Research Opportunities Program, if you're not at Michigan, but you think you might like to come here for the summer, this is a great one to do. They will put you up, they will feed you, they will pay you a stipend, they will help you prepare for the GRE, and you're working in a research lab. And it's not just Michigan that you can get placed at either. Research experiences for undergraduates. This is one that's funded by the National Science Foundation. And again, they basically have these summer experiences all over. MSpice is another one here at Michigan for people who are interested in development. You can see there's at Boston, there's at Madison. If you're more interested in the neuroscience, there's summer internship in biomedical research. So there's just like a ton of different options. So really just go ahead and look, Google, ask your favorite AI for a list, and you'll almost always find a lot of different options. For contacting your professors, this is a good sample email. Unless you already know the professor and they're, somebody who is teaching your class, it's always good to sort of start on the conservative side, call them doctor or professor. So you would say, dear Dr. Whoever, I'm a second-year student majoring in psychology, and I'm really interested in your lab's research on. Make sure they're actually doing research on that topic. I would love to get involved and volunteer if you have any openings. And I've attached my CV or resume for your review. For those of you who aren't familiar, a CV is sort of like an academic resume. And so it basically describes, in your case, it would describe sort of the courses that you've taken. If you have done any other research, you would describe that there. If you have been involved in different programs around research, you would describe those there as well. This last sentence can be really helpful, especially to make you stand out. If there are skills that you can see from looking at their lab that might be helpful, it's always a good idea to highlight that. So I have some experience in Excel, or I have some experience in working with animals. I have some experience in working with older adults, etc. Whatever you think would be a good fit for their lab. But I'm also very eager to learn. And then this last paragraph is sort of a way of, if you get if they don't have positions available now, but you're super interested in their lab, this is a good way to sort of get associated with their lab, start to let them get to know you. So that way, if something does come up, then you will be the first person that comes to their mind when there's an opening. So if you don't have any suggestions, I'm grateful for other suggestions on how to get involved and prepare for a position. For example, if you might be willing to let me sit in on your lab meeting, or have some good suggestions for papers to read. And thank them for their time and consideration. And again, for this last one, I can tell you, I ended up taking a graduate student because they did something like that. They came and visited me over the summer and asked me what they should do to prepare for graduate school. And then 2 years later, they emailed me and said, so after I talked to you, I didn't think I was ready for graduate school, so I went and did all the things that you told me to do, and now I'm applying. Do you have any room in your lab? And I was like, yes, come. That's really amazing. And they were a fantastic graduate student. So sometimes that can work out extremely well. All right, and I will turn it back over to Harini.
Okay. So what Dr. Lustig really described is like the beginning steps of how you should be applying to labs and what you should be thinking about when you're trying to apply for them, what your research interests are, things like that. Now, in an ideal world, when you email a professor, you would get a response back saying, yes, please join our lab. We have plenty of space. Unfortunately, this doesn't always happen, depending on when you apply or just the lab's capacity at that moment. Sometimes you may be in a situation where all the labs that you email or have contacted are full and you can't really find a position. Now, I'm sure some of you guys can relate to that. I won't ask you to raise your hand or anything like that, but I'm sure you've been in a similar position. Like I know I have when I was applying to research positions in undergrad. But there are things that you can do to try to make yourself stand out for the next round or to even try to get research positions so you're not kind of just waiting around trying to see if there's any labs near you that are accepting. There are other things that you can do. So first things first, one thing that Dr. Lustig kind of talked about at the beginning is how translatable research really can be. So it's a very applicable area. The skills that you learn in one lab can be easily applied to another lab. So for example, let's say you get accepted into a kinesiology lab or like a business lab or a lab that's in Ross, which is our business school here. Regardless of what you end up doing as a part of their research, you're going to have to develop some type of organizational skills, some type of communication skills, working with a team. These are all really important skills that you're going to develop and that can be applied to whatever your ideal research position is, whether that be in an animal lab or working with humans within the psych department. So that's one thing that Dr. Lustig kind of emphasized, and I want to emphasize further, is that you may be interested in, let's say, working with older adults. Don't just only look at labs that are interested in doing that research, especially if you're just reaching out for the first time. It can be helpful to try to see what else is there. You know, are there labs that are just working with people? What about children? I don't mind working with children for, let's say, a year to kind of build up that experience, and then you can apply it to older adults because depending on what age, some may argue that children are like older adults. So it's very applicable. So don't pigeonhole yourself. The other thing that I want to emphasize is that research happens outside of the psych department. So Dr. Lustig kind of talked about this. You can look at business schools, you can look at U of M Health or the med school here. You can also look at private research groups. So research happens outside of university settings as well. And I can tell you that I've just casually Googled on Indeed like research positions, and I found plenty of paid research assistant positions for private groups that are just looking for someone to help them clean their test tubes or help out in their animal labs. So those are all skills that you can develop and you can gain maybe as a part-time research assistant for a private research group that you then can apply for a research position within the psych department. So really try to expand your horizon and just apply and see what happens. Because at the end of the day, sometimes applications are just like a numbers game. The more that you send out, the greater the chance that you're going to get a response back. While you're doing that, while you're sending out all your emails and you're looking on Indeed or Google, whatever it is, there are some other things that you can be doing. Let's say you want to take a break from that because applying to jobs can be very draining and very tiring. Let's say you want to build some of your independent skills. So there are actually a lot of things that you can do that are really highly valuable within a research setting. So let's say you're looking at positions and you see that a lot of them require their research assistants to do some type of data analysis with SPSS or R or some type of literature review. And we'll be talking a little bit about what these things are in a bit. But let's say they require some type of experience in doing these things. These are all skills that you can learn on your own. What we recommend that you do is that you set something called SMART goals. So they're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time limited. So for example, let's say I wanted to learn how to code in R, which is a software that researchers commonly use to do some type of data cleaning or data analyses. Rather than saying, my goal is to learn how to code in R, I would say, I'm going to spend 30 minutes on Code Academy per day until I learn this specific skill or until I develop this specific type of code, whatever it may be. And that's really going to help you to hone in on the skills that you're trying to gain in a more achievable manner rather than just saying like abstractly, I'm going to learn how to code, because I'm sure we've all been there where we're trying to set goals and it's like, I'm going to lose weight or whatever it is. And it's like, that's not going to happen. The other thing is that while you're looking at all these positions, you really want to make sure that you're not trying to overburden yourself. It may be very exciting when you look at a position and you see like, oh, these are all skills that I can do on my own. I'm gonna, try to learn how to code in R and make a pivot table in Excel and read a bunch of papers all at once, and I'm gonna do it by the end of this month. That's a lot of things to do, especially if you're in classes and you're taking other extracurriculars. It can be a lot to have to do all at once. So you definitely want to start off slow. Again, set your SMART goals and try to start small. So again, 30 minutes of Code Academy per day is always like a good thing to try to limit yourself with. And then it's like really important, and something that I have to remind myself often is that new things are hard. New skills are difficult to learn, and that's just how they are. You're not going to be innately good at doing literature reviews or innately good at coding. No one is amazing that right off the bat. I've struggled with coding. I'm sure Dr. Lustig has struggled with coding, and I'm sure other things that I haven't even touched upon. So that's normal. It happens, and that's kind of the great thing about becoming a research assistant is that you're going to be constantly in a position where you're going to have to learn new things, and that doesn't go away as you do research. That's something that innately happens to all of us. We're all going to be in a position of constantly learning. So it's totally normal that things are hard at first. What we recommend in those situations, though, is find a accountability partner or multiple. I think there are even like you can go on Discord and there'll be like study room situations where you can hop into a Discord and there'll be like multiple people working at once. So try to set up some type of situation that you could hold yourself accountable and make sure that you're actually achieving your goals. So you're not just saying them and they go into the space. And lastly, success is not guaranteed. Please be kind to yourself. And these things take time. Like Dr. Lustig said, research takes time. Getting a position takes time. And that's just what it is. So don't be too hard on yourself if something does not go according to plan. Any questions so far? Okay. So one thing that Dr. Lustig said, and I want to kind of go into a little bit more detail about, is checking the methods section of the papers that you're interested in. So what does that mean? Let's say you're interested in learning new skills, but you don't really know what kind of skills the lab that you're interested in wants you to know. One thing that may be helpful is to read the papers that the lab is producing, the most recent, like within the past 5 years. What are they working on? And if you go into the methods section of a research paper, you can see what type of analyses they're running, the type of software they're using. And oftentimes, a lot of the analyses and software that they use, especially if it's like behavioral data, so like human data or qualitative data, you can easily download that off of the internet. So I'll talk about this more in detail, but R is something that you can just download for free. You don't have to pay for it. It's totally open source. And you can start analyzing data that is available on GitHub, which is kind of like a repository for researchers, for scientists, not even for anyone really who wants to share data sets. There are a lot of open source data sets that are available on GitHub that you can readily download. You can also learn some of the skills or some of the techniques that labs are using through a course on Coursera, or you can also do it through like a massive open online course. So Google, for example, LinkedIn Learning is another one that you can find all these different training modules, and you can learn those skills in a more traditional, more stringent way if you find it difficult to do online learning. And the reason why it might be helpful also to take a course is that oftentimes these courses will give you a certificate. So for example, if you do like a course through Google, they'll give you like a Google Learning certificate that you then can attach to your CV or resume as like a backup and as like an example of like, I have perfected the skill. I know what I'm talking about when I say I can do coding. That's also something important. So if you end up gaining additional skills, you'll want to make sure that you include it in your CV or resume and that you're specific about what exactly you did. So for example, if you did end up getting a certificate through a course, make sure you add that course in your resume. If you end up making a GitHub page for programming, then make sure you include that in your resume. You can even include your GitHub link or your URL, whatever the handle is, and you can include that on your resume as like something that if you're applying for a research lab, they can look up and they can verify that you've done what you said you've done. Now, I mentioned this idea of literature reviews, and a lit review is essentially just a review of the literature in the area that you're interested in. Maybe you've had to do some type of literature review or summary of a field or summary of a topic in one of your classes. And similar to maybe what you did in your class, researchers often have to do this too. You can find literature reviews on Google Scholar. For example, there are literature reviews on like working memory, on stimulation, things like that. So, as you're trying to build your skills, if you wanted to kind of proceed down the route of doing a literature review, there are various different ways to gather your materials. For example, PubMed, Research Rabbit is one that I use personally, Google Scholar, Web of Science. They are all really good in terms of accumulating various different papers. Just to plug Research Rabbit real quick, why I like it is that if you type in a paper, it'll give you a map of all the different papers that are related to it, and it'll kind of like synthesize in a way, not really, but visually synthesize that information for you. So you then have a better handle of the literature in that field. And once you gather all your papers through all these different tools, you can then actually put them into a program or software that will help you organize it. So Zotero, Medley, they're all ways that you can organize your papers and also help with citations. So Zotero and Medley will also help you with your citations. I believe EndNote will do that as well. And Zotero, Medley, they're all free. At least I believe they're still free. And that's something that you can readily download off the internet, or you can use it through your web browser. Either or, it's all available. Okay, before I move on to Excel and some other things, I want to pause real quick and see if anyone has any questions on anything that we talked about so far. Okay. So let's say some of the skills that you're interested in developing, instead of doing like a literature review, you're interested in doing more stats. And, there are a couple of different ways you can do this. Excel is an excellent way to get more familiar with plotting or stats. You can even use Excel to do pivot tables, which are like very quick summaries of your data. I'm sure many of you have used Excel. If not, you've used Google Sheets in some way. And a lot of the skills that you can use for Excel can be easily applicable to Google Sheets and vice versa. So let's say you want to like summarize information. You can easily do that with formulas. There are quick stats and even charting. You can easily plot things through Excel or Google Sheets. And I will say researchers also use Excel. I know a couple of researchers who use Excel, which sounds kind of crazy, but they'll use Excel to do like a t-test or some type of quick analysis just to check in on their data. Google Sheets is also something that, I use to organize my stimuli, and I want to make sure that whoever I'm working with as a research assistant is familiar with at least Excel or Google Sheets, and I don't have to explain to them like what a cell is. So it's always helpful to kind of get some of those basics down as well. Now, let's say you're interested in a little bit more rigorous statistics, more in-depth cleaning of the data. That's where you could use something like R, JASP, or SPSS. R and JASP, again, like I mentioned, are open source packages or open source software, excuse me, that you can download off the internet right now, honestly, and you can find a data set off of GitHub. I know they're really fun data sets. Like, I know there's a data set about like Taylor Swift songs and the popularity of her songs. So like it doesn't have to be something like super sciencey. It could be something fun. There are like data sets about um, like different games and things like that. But you can use it to run your own analyses and to clean it. And you can even plot, let's say you want to plot what era was the most popular era across for Taylor Swift. Like that's something you can do with R and JASP. Some schools also provide access to SPSS, so I would definitely recommend you just Googling and seeing what your school has to offer in terms of its open source software. You can easily download it and you can have access to it. As you're going through and like building up your skills when it comes to stats or coding or whatever it may be, you're welcome to ask Google. That's something that some researchers use. Like I know when I'm learning how to code out Google, how do I do this? And Google will tell me how to, clean my column or whatever I need it to be. Chat GPT is also obviously very popular now, and it's sources from the internet. So don't feel afraid to use the resources at hand. So Googling, ChatGPT, they're all good resources when you're trying to develop and learn a new skill. So I bet maybe some of you guys are interested to know, what do grad students and what do faculty actually use in their lab? So in 2020, we asked faculties or principal investigators, so PIs, graduate students, and also lab managers to respond to several questions. And these questions were really geared to asking about what type of software they use for data management or analyses, experimental survey, and data collection, or other items. So this was kind of our demographic our breakdown. We had a sample size of 47. This is again within U of M. So we have various different areas of psych research, biopsych, CCN, which is the area that both me and Cindy are or Dr. Lustig are part of, clinical, CPEP, developmental, PNSC, and social. And then we had a majority of faculty members respond with then graduate students, and then lastly, lab managers. So it turns out that a majority of individuals in all areas except biopsych, which is the area that looks at animal brain behavior, things like that, use Qualtrics and REDCap. So both of these are online platforms. Qualtrics is basically just a website, same thing with REDCap. And you can build and administer online surveys through them. So that's what they use those two websites for. Then for actually collecting data, they'll use Prolific and MTurk. Again, instead of using SONA or Subject Pool, which I'm sure your undergrads or your universities do, you can collect data from across the country. You can collect data internationally as well through Prolific and MTurk. So those are the two most used platforms for that. That's all online data collection as well. And then for creating behavioral experiments, they'll often use PsychoPy or Pavlovia. Now, PsychoPy, again, is a available online open source software that you can download off the internet right now. And you can use it to create your own behavioral experiments. There are really cool YouTube videos on how to do like a Stroop task or like a flanker task. You can even use PsychoPy to create like a game. I've seen them use it to create like Mario, like a Mario level. So you can do really cool stuff. Within biopsych and CCN, the two most common softwares to actually analyze data and plot is MATLAB and Python. I would argue that R should be in there, but I wasn't there when they did this survey, so I don't know. But I personally use R. I think a majority of the graduate students use R. And again, R is open source. You can download that off the internet. And then to actually design behavioral experiments, again, like I said, PsychoPy, Psych Toolbox, which goes along with PsychoPy, and ePrime, which is another type of software, they're used most commonly to actually design the behavioral experiments. Yes, Cindy.
Yeah. So let me just pop in. So the MATLAB and Python are also for running experiments and creating them. So CyclePy, it's like anything else where it's much easier to use because it has sort of this graphical interface. At least at the time, it's grown a lot now. It was not as powerful as just doing straight up coding. But you're right. Yes, R is very popular still for data analysis. This is for data collection. In biopsychology, so in people who are doing animal research in particular, they often need to have a computer program that is going to operate the equipment that gets used to test the animals, right? So something that's going to operate the levers or is going to present the food at the right times and so on. So they use it a lot for that.
That's a very good point. I have never worked in a biopsych lab, obviously, so that definitely makes sense as to why they would use MATLAB or even Python. So then in terms of what type of software they used for experiments, surveys, and data collection, this graph kind of breaks it down by the area as well as the software. And you could see that for survey creation and data collection, Qualtrics is the most prevalently used across all areas. Then Prolific seems to be, or sorry, oh yes, Prolific is on the side, and then maybe MTurk would be the next most used. I think one thing that is obviously clear is that a lot of the software that researchers use, though, are open source. Like anyone can access it. So even you, if you're interested in developing a survey, you could go on Qualtrics right now and create your own survey, play around with the different modules. You can even give it out to your friends and family. Same thing with CyclePy / Prolific. You can do that on your own. A lot of these things are open source. And then for data management / analysis, like I said earlier, a lot of people in all the areas use Excel because sometimes the simplest is the best way to go about it. If I wanted to just do a quick summary of my data, I would just do a quick pivot table in Excel to get a summary of kind of how my participants are doing. R and SPSS are the next best ones. They're a little bit more powerful than Excel, so they would be really good for data management and analyses. And then MATLAB, Python, GPower is typically known to do power analyses. So that would be more involved for like data analyses and things like that. But there's really good, GPower is open source and there are really good literature on how to use it. So if you're interested in running like a power analysis to try to figure out how many participants you need for a hypothetical study, that's something you would use for that. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So one thing Dr. Lustig mentioned is that labs may be operating in a online space. So prior to the pandemic, a lot of psych labs, or at least that I were familiar with, did a lot of their testing in person. But since the pandemic happened, a lot of them had to move to online platforms. So a lot of them are running their experiments online through different servers, which results in less need for research assistants to help with that in-person testing. But it does not mean that these labs don't need research assistants. In fact, they might need them even more because they need help creating online studies and to help with data wrangling, data cleaning, things like that. And these are all skills that you can do and try to pick up on your own. And I can tell you if I saw that an applicant that was applying to my lab had some type of experience with R, with data cleaning, or with Qualtrics to create surveys, I would instantly hire them because that's all things that I don't love to do. I mean, I can do it. I'm more than happy to do it. But if I can outsource it in any way, I am more than happy to outsource it because that all takes time. So again, these are all skills that you can start picking up and you can start developing on your own. And even if you're not 100% perfect, that's okay. All that matters is that you have some type of exposure to it. You know what, for example, Qualtrics is, you know what R looks like. That all saves time on your graduate student or your faculty members end where they don't have to introduce to you what these like very basic topics are. And that at the end of the day is really helpful for them. So in summary, what I want to just briefly talk about here is you want to, again, build your skills, but build your skills with intention. So think about realistically what's going to help you in whatever position you're interested in. If you're interested in going to a research lab as an RA, interested in going to grad school, interested in doing a post back, what are your overall goals? And kind of work backwards from there because you don't want to spend time on something that isn't actually going to help you. So, for example, if you're interested in doing a post back and maybe you want to become a lab manager, maybe learning a little bit about website design could be helpful for that because like Cindy or Dr. Lustig said, a lot of labs have outdated websites. Mine is very outdated. So having some type of experience with website design might be helpful. Having some experience with R, Python, any type of coding, again, is very helpful. Doing some of these certificates or even some neuroimaging analyses, which you can do through online training courses like Coursera or LinkedIn, that could all be really useful. Again, just getting some exposure to what you may eventually be doing in whatever your position is will ultimately be beneficial. If you want to work with specific populations that may involve you having to go abroad or work with vulnerable populations that require you to learn a new skill, maybe starting to develop those skills early on would be helpful for you. Even if you, let's say, are not necessarily interested in that, but you think eventually you're going to have to work with some type of population, why not pick up a new skill? You could also start looking at relevant coursework and readings, again, just to try to broaden your horizon and get exposed to as much information as possible that may be relevant to, again, what your eventual goal is. And you may even want to start looking at volunteer work or even more leadership positions that can really help you show that you're interested in multiple things, multifaceted work, because a lot of research can be applied to real life settings and that and even like in research, you may have to be part of a team, you may have to lead that team. So demonstrating leadership and responsibility is very important for that as well. Some of these are additional trainings that I've already mentioned. So again, Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, Google certificates, Code Academy is really helpful if you are interested in learning how to code. YouTube, you can learn a lot off of YouTube. You can check those websites and newsletters. And then lastly, ask a grad student. I'm a grad student. You're more than welcome to ask me, but also any grad student that you think would be nice, feel free to reach out to them. I'm sure they'll be happy to talk to you. I can tell you from experience, grad students like to talk, so I can guarantee you that they'll be more than happy to spend a couple minutes chatting with you. And just some final takeaways for you guys. Again, make sure that as you're moving forward in this journey, it can be difficult. You may struggle, but try to think positively. All of these are going to be ultimately beneficial for you at the long run. So you may struggle a little bit, but you're going to really excel in the future. And research is a lot about thinking creatively, and you want to make sure that you're kind of broadening your horizons in that way. This is also a really good opportunity to be thoughtful about what type of skills and experiences you want to cultivate for yourself. And don't be afraid to, look outside of box and see what else is out there. You never know what road will lead you to where you want to go. So really, this is a great time to explore and see what else is out there. Okay. That's it from me. Again, if you have any questions or comments, you're more than welcome to ask them now. Happy to take any questions or comments now. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Hi, sorry, I would turn on my camera, but my laptop has been very glitchy these days. Sorry about that. I had a quick question. I'm a first semester freshman, and I wanted to ask, does it make sense for me to spend time emailing and applying to labs if there's a minimal chance my help will be required? And should I be more focused on building those skills that you had talked about earlier when it comes to learning how to use different programs and coding languages?
Yeah, great question. So just to summarize, just so I make sure, it's just so I know that this is what you're asking. Your question was whether or not you should spend time trying to email labs, or should you spend more time looking at different skills that you could be building on right now? Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. I think it kind of depends on various different factors. So for one, you could try to put out a couple of feelers right now at different labs just to see if they are accepting. And if they're not, you can, of course, follow up and ask, like, "Oh, okay, what do you look for in a research assistant?" I think that would be ultimately beneficial for you then to kind of take that information and try to apply it and try to build more skills in that area. I wouldn't necessarily say that being, first semester undergrad is a limitation in any way. I have accepted first years in my lab before. It just kind of depends on what the lab is looking for and what skills they're hoping to get out of their grad or their undergrad. Um, well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll pipe in on this. I think that's one where it really helps also to take a look at what the lab does, and what the opportunities for growth are there. So if it's a lab where you will be testing behavioral participants, a lot of times they are happier to take folks who maybe don't have a lot of those technical skills yet, but have some experience working with people. So that like even working in retail can help because we just took on somebody in my lab who had worked in customer service and who had worked in a nursing home, and so it was used to dealing with folks who were difficult or in a bad mood or who are feeling a little challenged. And sometimes when we're testing older adults' memories, they're usually very nice, but they do get a little grumpy. And so, whereas, if you're going to a lab where it's like, oh, we are the computational memory lab, then that might be one where it's like, yeah, no, you're going to need to know the Python. And so taking a look at those kinds of skills. And for us, I know in Harini, I'm guessing it's the same for you too. It's always a trade-off for us because we do realize a lot of times that the people who come in with more skills and experience, it often means that we will have them for less time in the lab. So if you're coming in as a first year student and you're like, you can show like, hey, I'm organized, I'm on top of things, I have some things that are relevant to your lab, you do still have a chance, I would say. Does that help address your question?
Yeah, that was perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you for the presentation.
Yes, good luck.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So we have one on how to approach psych research as a pre-med.
Sure. I think I might need like some more information though. Because what do you mean by approach psych research? I don't know if Dr. Lustig, if you have a better read
So are
on.
you thinking about, so Stacey, if you could maybe type in the chat if you can't talk, like, are you thinking about what to Like, are you trying to figure out which research interests you have, or what skills you should develop, or would you be of interest to a psych lab? Like, can you narrow down your question a little more? And while you're thinking about that, I will say many of us do take pre-meds as well, because many pre-meds are psych and BCN majors too.
Yes. If you were trying to like figure out how to do psych research, that maybe would be most applicable to your uh, kind of what you may want to do as a medical student. You could try to look at labs that collaborate with Michigan Med if you're from U of M,
Mm-hmm.
or that collaborate with a medical school, because oftentimes they'll do research that is, relevant to medicine. Um, I'm sure even like clinical psych labs.
Oh, no, I don't think it will be harder for you to get the opportunities. At this point, like we realize that people are still sort of shaping their careers. And so it really comes down to, are you interested in the lab? And do you have the skills that they're looking for?
Mhm.
All right, good luck. So while people are thinking over, one other tip I'll give is that a lot of the labs, I would say, especially in the site department now, like maybe sort of towards the later ends of their hiring, at least for this semester. So if you're feeling like, oh, I would have liked to do this, but I feel like, oops, did I miss out? I would say I would also start checking in with them again, like around March or April, to ask about summer positions. Because many times what happens is that our regular RAs go home over the summer. And so if you're going to be staying on campus, or we've also had, I know in my lab, and I'm guessing Harini, you have too, where people who have gone away to do their undergrad someplace else, and they'll be back here in Ann Arbor for the summer, and then they want to come and do a research experience in our labs for the summer. So that can often open things up as well.
Since Dr. Lustig kind of talked a little bit about timelines of like when you should be applying, I just wanted to add a couple comments about that. I will say that in my experience, I start thinking about if I need new RAs like a month or two before the end of the semester. So let's say semester ends in December. I start thinking about if I need new RAs in late October, November time. I start assessing if any of my current RAs are going to come back, if I need to hire more. So that's also when I start doing applications, interviews for new RAs. So I would start reaching out to labs, a month or two before the semester starts. And that includes like over the summertime, because again, that's when they start assessing their needs. And you're probably more likely to have a better response in terms of like maybe getting an application or getting an interview or something like that, than if you were to apply like very beginning of the semester or like a month after the semester starts, because at that point labs have kind of already kind of filled in their positions and have started the semester.
Any other questions? Shyamala, I'm not sure if you were trying to ask us the question. We weren't quite able to hear you. I think your phone might be a little far from you.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I,
You're breaking up. If you're able to put it into the chat, or if not, you can also email me or Harini afterwards too. Yeah, I'm so sorry. We're unfortunately not able to hear you. So go ahead and email us later if you can't put it into the chat. It looked like maybe you were in the car. So you can just email us and we'll be happy to help you out. So somebody asked, is there any benefit of reaching out, applying in the middle of the semester, even if it means you're following up again towards the end of the semester? Yes. I mean, showing that kind of consistent interest is really good too. And again, I would also, especially if you are applying now and like you're not sure if they're going to have any positions, you can even just acknowledge like in the second part of that email and say, I realize you might not have any openings now, but I'm really interested by your lab. In your lab, like, is it possible, could I even sit in on your lab meetings? Or are there things that you would suggest I do to prepare for when you have a position? And I know like we have had people do that where, they just started consistently showing up to lab meetings. And so then it was like, well, okay, when we have a position, clearly this is the person that we want to get because they've shown they're invested. All right, if there aren't any more questions, then thank you guys so much for your time and your attention. Let us know if you have any questions and enjoy the rest of your day.